good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're welcome to today's show, The Real Talk under the Zambian Youth Platform. I am your host, Dr. Nchimunya Mwende, and we bring to you again yet another interesting topic, which I believe that will be very beneficial to many young people out there. I am not alone. I'm joined with two of our amazing, wonderful guests today, and I'll just allow them to just introduce themselves. Henry, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwinde. So, good afternoon, viewers, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to be here again today and discuss very interesting topic. So, my name is Henry Muzu. I'm a public health activist, and I'm happy to be part of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Stella, please.
Hello, everyone, and it's a great pleasure to be amongst great people, hoping to get interactive with everyone.
All right. Thank you very much. So today we have an interesting topic for you. You can catch us we have the Real Talk every Friday at 14 hours 14 hours Central African time and at 15 hours or 3 p.m. at East African time. Today we come to you with yet again an amazing topic, and you are welcome to join in, comment, tag your friend, invite somebody to invite somebody, and let's just make it interactive. Even as we're going through this show today, we'll be reading the comments, and also please do watch out because we'll be announcing our winners for the competition that has been running. So just bring it back. Our topic today is what actions are needed to address inequality and help end HIV and AIDS. Though before we get into it, I'll just like to hear from you, Henry. With the talks that are happening around, as we're commemorating the World AIDS Day, which was yesterday, under the theme "Putting Ourselves to the Test: Achieving Equality," to end HIV. How do you understand? Like, how would you put it in your own words to really explain this theme?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mwinde. So, it's a very interesting topic, really, and I really appreciate to be given such an opportunity. So, I think for starters, if you want to describe the word inequality, I think the general definition can be as simple as lack of equality. It's the opposite. So, the lack of equal distribution of benefits, resources, opportunities, and circumstances, then those are what would actually equalize the inequality itself. And then it's also interesting to note that there are different types of inequalities that exist. There are political inequalities, there's inequalities of opportunities, there's social inequalities, the health inequalities, and so many other inequalities that disadvantage the opportunity for people to benefit from resources or circumstances that can equalize their benefits as human beings. Over.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much for that. Stella, would you also take it up? Maybe you can also
Um,
explain it to us in a way in which you understand the year's theme that we've had.
okay. So, just to add on further, it's actually explained it more broadly. Maybe just to add on, there are a lot of inequalities that mostly people living with HIV undergo. These could be discrimination. There's a lot of discrimination out there, and there's also lack of information to people, especially people in rural setups.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, I recently came to understand that the number of HIV infected youth has actually spiked, which causes so much worry, and I believe that's one of the reasons why we actually have such a topic to just address that, because we it's important for people to really understand that there are a lot of factors that go around, and also factors that affect inequalities. So maybe Henry, you can explain to us what inequalities exist towards ending HIV and why we need to end HIV and AIDS.
Thank you so much, Doctor. So, as Stella has touched a bit on it, and she mentioned about the lack of information. So, I think one thing that we need to note is that when we think about the interventions that have been developed to address really the HIV transmission or the HIV challenges that exist in different populations, including the young people, you will find that the defined interventions sometimes do not address the specific needs that are sometimes population based. So if we're going to think about young people and you pick an example of access to HIV testing services, one thing that we need to highlight there is that what are some of the challenges that young people face as far as access to HIV testing is concerned. So you will realize that there's an age factor there. You cannot be below the age of 16 and have access to HIV testing services, regardless of the risk that you're associated with. So you find that that in itself poses a challenge for many people to know their HIV status. And then second, you're going to talk about the availability of prevention information. Yes, we've got what we call pre-exposure prophylaxis that is supposed to benefit individuals to prevent the HIV. We have availability of PEP, but what is accessibility like? Okay, we have availability of the service defined in different health facilities, but then the challenge is that how is the accessibility? You know, how easy is it for young people to go to different health facilities and access this service? If a young people walked into a clinic and asked to say, I want PEP, you know, definitely for someone to ask peptides was because they were associated with an activity that could have risked them of the HIV transmission. And then you'll find that them asking for that service, sometimes they get to have a lot of structural barriers where a lot of questions are being asked to them. Did you have sex? Was it protected? What happened exactly? What is the mode of transmission that you've been exposed to that is asking, making you to come and access this service? So certain questions, if they're not really asked properly, you're going to find that they disadvantage the young person from accessing HIV available services. The pre-exposure prophylaxis, know that our treatment guidelines have defined, the pre-exposure prophylaxis to be an intervention that should be given to people that identify being at risk of HIV transmission. But then, have you ever thought about pre-exposure prophylaxis itself definition, localizing it or putting it in a language that a person who's in the rural part of Zambia should understand? Because it is easier for us to say pre-exposure prophylaxis. By the way, pre-exposure prophylaxis itself is not like the drug. It's a process of someone being put on an intervention to prevent them from getting HIV. The name of the drug is Truvada. But then, how do you unpack the same information so that the young person who's in the rural part of Zambia is able to understand? And understanding that definition itself should be able to create that demand for a service. So, us failing to actually equalize that availability of that service or unpacking the information to the level that a young person should understand in itself, that becomes an inequality there, right? And then, so when you think about also the challenges that young women face, you know that about 50% women have got a higher chance of acquiring HIV because a lot of things are associated. Gender-based violence is one of them. Mental health issues associated. So failure for us to define a package that is able to address these issues is now what is bringing about inequalities. Just this morning, I was having a conversation with someone just for social chats, and we're talking about why do we have high cost and low cost in the facilities where we go. Sometimes we've got this is high cost, this is low cost. You're going to find that the same hospital has got two sections. There's high cost, is low cost. You okay? The people that go to high cost services, they've got access to timely services for them. They don't have to wait too long on the queue because they're going to be attended to by a professional. They're going to be screened. They've got access to machinery. They've got access to laboratory services, and they've got a good turnaround time for their results so that the adequate service is provided to them. When you go to the low side, the low cost side, you're going to find that first of all, someone is going to walk from the compound long hours to get to the clinic, and only for them to arrive at the clinic and wait too long before they can actually get attended to. And then after being attended to, the last thing that they end up with is a prescription. Or the same hospital, the other side, someone has been attended and they've been given medication. You're going to find that those imbalances that exist in those systems are what are really promoting the inequalities that exist. And that is the factor that we are discussing today that is also contributing to the HIV transmission. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Wow, that has been a lot, a lot of good information that you have just outlined there. I like what you said concerning um, uh, health, rather sexual education, and even prep education, out there, because many people, I believe, don't even know or even understand what prep is, and that it is actually to their disposal. That if they actually walk up to any health center, they have the ability to access it, but because of lack of information, and even like you said, where we package it in such a way that young people, even in those that may not necessarily understand English, where say if it's a Bemba speaking person or a Tonga speaking person, we're able to explain it to them in such a way that it will actually be beneficial to them. I think those areas are really lacking. Thank you so much for highlighting those. Even as we go through as we continue this conversation. Thank you so much for all those that are joining us via Facebook, via YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. You're welcome to just share your thoughts, your comments, and we'll be reading them out even as we continue this conversation. Um, so what how can these inequalities be nullified? How can we nullify these inequalities? Stella, maybe you can just shed more light on that.
Okay, so looking at the challenges that people living with HIV face, um, a law and government that protects people with regards to their status being exposed without their consent. I'm not really sure about that, but I feel there's supposed to be like stiff punishment to those people because they lower the self-esteem. They also make the person end up having negative thoughts. And then we also need more knowledge, especially in the rural setups. For the urban areas, we've got learned people, people who can easily understand in English, like Henry put it. If we've got a lot of brochures in different languages, it's going to be easier to communicate to the people. Or even as we are sensitizing, it's best we use all the means, all the languages if possible. And also uh, a sign language interpreter as we are advocating for these things.
Yeah, that's very important, Stella. So maybe just to add to what Stella has actually shared, Dr. Mwinde, is if you think about just again, I think for the past few days, I've really been having a lot of conversations around accessibility of what we define as intervention. So for me, I just made a funny post on my Facebook where I got an HIV self kit, and then I got two condom packs, female and male, and then I also got the pre-exposure prophylaxis bot as well as the post-exposure prophylaxis pill. And then I said, okay, how about if we have this package defined somewhere where people can actually just go maybe every 3 months or 1 month, or maybe because when people come for HIV testing services, we tell them, say, come back after 3 months, right? And most we give this information to the people that test HIV negative. And then sometimes we just talk about the available service. Now we've got PrEP here, we provide PrEP and all of that services. How about if we utilize that same interaction when a client has come over to the clinic for an HIV test? How about if we provide education about available prevention services at the same time offer, if someone will be interested, give them that pack and say, should you decide to take this prevention intervention that we have here, you can decide as you come back in 3 months, we'll have a discussion. We'll be talking about okay, did you use the HIV self kit? Yes. Okay, did you have any incidences of condom based or unprotected sex, whatever happened? And then did you consider taking the post exposure prophylaxis after that incident happened? And then if someone responds, it is an opportunity for you now to provide more information and still give them more stocks so that they can at least be empowered. But now we find that we define these interventions, doc, in the facilities, but people don't see them, right? People don't. I don't know how easy it is for people to actually access them, because then what happens is, if I go back and I've made up my mind, so oh, actually they talked about pre-exposure prophylaxis, semenizinatenga, but it's too late. I'm already back home. For me to think about making an appointment to go to that facility and have access to that service, find that that in itself becomes the barrier. So I think we need to make accessibility very user friendly so that I can make an option. The service should be presented to me on a plate and say, do you want to take it or not? You can talk about, but how easy is it for you to package it in a way that can benefit me the time that I'm going to make a decision? This is December. We are moving towards Christmas. A lot of activities are going to happen. People are going to be traveling from one place to another. This would have been the best time for us to come up with those packages, give them to people so that they can use them at their own time. And then when they come back for those appointments, it will be easier for us to have a conversation about, did you use the service? What were the benefits? What are the recommendations? What are the challenges in that regard? I was also thinking deeply about how the post-exposure prophylaxis intervention itself has worked in the country. You will find that there are certain interventions that have benefited others than the others. So in this regard, if you look at the post-exposure prophylaxis, you'll find that, for example, it could have benefited more women than men. Why? It is because whenever men go to the clinic to go and access those services, they are being already assumed about you are having unprotected sex. Now, last month, so you find that people begin to change facilities. Instead of going to the same clinic, they're going to say, if I go to Kalingalenga clinic, that nurse is going to ask me the same question again. Eventually, I'm not going to do that. So they keep going to different clinics to collect these, to access these services. Now, there's also an aspect that I've discovered that there's some people that are also accessing post-exposure prophylaxis. Most of them, we don't have this service properly documented in the facilities because now people are learning how to make connections. Okay, now, because the healthcare providers are creating a barrier for people to access services, so people are also thinking about alternatives about how they can still have access to the commodity and benefit from it. People are making connections. No, man, I'm going to call you tomorrow. When this person should have come to the facility and have a discussion without being discriminated, without being stigmatized, without being questioned about how many times and how many sexual partners that they have. So those are also barriers that really prevent people from accessing prevention interventions. And as long as those barriers are not being addressed, we're going to continue complaining about inequalities that exist. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. That was very good information. Uh, I like what you mentioned. You talked about how, even as we're drawing closer to the festive season, a lot of things are happening. A lot of people are getting involved in various activities. And I believe one of the things that I've noticed is the lack of sexual health education. You find that some of these things are more like considered taboo to talk about. So you find issues of sex are not really, people aren't really free to talk about them. Thus, people actually, young people wanting to use certain routes to protect themselves. For example, condom use, prep use. You find that they are hindered because of that stigma, and like you said, the way people begin to perceive them as people that are sexually active. Even the way someone would look at you, they'll be like, this one at their age, they're already starting. So they'd rather do things secretly, which is something that has, which I believe that is something that eventually affects and actually helps increase this number of HIV infected youth. So I believe one of the ways, like you said, is to improve in those areas, and enable people to be free enough to access these things without even feeling judged. Because it is better that you use these methods that have been made available to you than you feeling judged and falling prey to these, HIV. That isn't a new thing around us. Thank you very much for that. So we're still going on this amazing topic, on equality. What actions are needed to address inequalities and help end HIV and AIDS even in young people. You are welcome to comment, in the comment section, and we'll be able to read out your comment, your contribution, even as the discussion goes on. We have an interesting one. I'll just read it from Kunda, and it says we can address inequalities through sensitization, which can be in form of drama or songs, and we can end HIV by encouraging those people who are living with AIDS to have only one sexual partner and always use condoms when having sexual intercourse. Thank you very much for that. Another comment that we have is, to address to deal with inequality, there is need to rebrand the packaging of condoms to include discrimination and disclosure. Thank you very much, Hope Malambo, for that. Your comments are still welcome, even as we continue through this conversation. All right. So, what then can we really say that AIDS can come to an end? Is there a way that we can really end AIDS? Stella, what do you think?
That one is a crucial one. It's crucial because I wouldn't say we can end AIDS, but I would say we can reduce new infections that may lead to AIDS. Like we have been campaigning about the U equals U. We've been talking about how someone cannot transmit it to another person. We've also been talking of the preventive measures that we can use not to prevent it to another person. But then, like we've been talking about the inequalities, earlier today I received a message on my blog, and then this person was like, there's no pride in telling everyone about your status. Everyone is going to die, stuff like that. But I feel opening up helps other people to open up even to their partners so that they should not expose their partners to the virus. And that is one of the ways in which we can end new infections that may lead to AIDS. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I see the comment section is starting to, pop up. Before we I can read any of those, Henry, would you answer this question for us? Do you really think AIDS can really be brought to an end?
Dr. Mwinde, that's a tough one. But Stella, thank you so much for breaking the ice. So I like what Stella said that so ending it is very subjective. I think it's an ambition. We're being ambitious when we talk about ending it, but what we can say is we can have control over it, in various
Yeah.
ways. I think we need to be very practical in terms of strategies that we can apply to really respond to the needs. So, for example, I wanted to just challenge parents a little bit here by saying that, and I've tried it in my house. So I've got three young brothers at home. And one time I came from a workshop and they were distributing boxes of condoms. So I collected one condom, actually, two boxes of condoms. So when I got home, I got one pack, I put it in my bathroom, and then I got the other pack, I put it in the boys' bathroom. So when we had dinner later on, I just got like 3 strips of the condom, and I just said, "Boys, have you seen this?" And they you know how boys are. They started laughing at me, and then I said, "I brought these condoms for our consumption. I did not say for your consumption. I just said for our consumptions. If you're going to decide to have sex with someone, I wasn't discouraging them from not having sex because I've got no control and they'll have it anyway. I just said, if you're going to decide to have sex with someone, there's a condom here. So I'm going to teach you how to use it. So one of them was attentive. The other was like, I'm calm. But they were looking away. I still went ahead and provided the education. And after that, I put the condom in the bathroom. So the condom stayed there for over a week and they were not moving at all. I think about 2 weeks really passed. I said, okay, let me just count because I knew that there were 144 sachets of condoms in there. When I counted, I realized that the number was 84. Then I was like, okay. And then I noted that as time went by, the condoms started reducing. Now, when the number was getting to about 40, 30, somewhere there, they stopped moving. So I realized that they were getting guilty that, and they would even change the way they were displayed because initially they were standing like this, but now they are falling like this so that whenever anybody looks, they look like they are a lot. I said, oh, okay. So my boys are using condoms. So what I did was to go to the clinic and get a refill of condoms and then I put it back in there. And that became like a lifestyle. For a very long time, I realized that the condoms are being used in their house. And I made it comfortable for them to know that discussing a condom is not a big issue. It is for your own benefit. So I want parents to start normalizing that they can still pick a pack of condoms and still keep in the boys' bathroom or whatever, even in their bedroom. You can just put it there. When you don't find it, don't question where it has gone. Just what it has been used. That's why you brought it there. So you should not be having those conversations. So I feel that in terms of strategies to end AIDS, we need to be very practical. So for the parents, we can normalize having condoms and having conversation about condom usage in our homes. I've got my other cousin. She was just starting first year school in university. And when we're giving the send-off messages, for me, of everyone else that advisor, for me, I just went specific. I said, where are you going there? You're going to meet challenges. You're going to find boys that are going to take you out for dinner and whatever. I did not discourage that, say, when they take you out to refuse. I didn't say that. I said, go out if you want to go to. But when it's time to pay the bill, call me. Then he says, why am I going to go? I said, just call me. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So this time she went out for it and then she called me and then said, what's the situation? Like, I said, no, we've eaten now. The person has asked for a bill. I said, okay, just check your Airtel money. So I sent her money. And then when I sent her that money, I said, that money that I've sent you, I want you to pay the bill. I want you to challenge the guy that you can pay the bill. So when the bill came, the girl said, no, I'm going to pay for the bill. And she insisted until she managed to pay the bill. What does that do? It shows that my child was actually empowered. She was able to challenge that she will not get, someone not take advantage of sleeping with her based on the fact that they bought for them dinner. So that's one way that I used to actually challenge that. Then in terms of the services that we have available, I feel that we still need to do more marketing in terms of PrEP. We need to do more marketing of post-exposure prophylaxis, PEP. I think we've talked more about pre-exposure prophylaxis and we've spoken less about post-exposure. So I think we need to create more demand and let people know that, you need to make sure that the service post-exposure prophylaxis is available for everyone. Everyone that asks for it should be able to have access to it. And we also need to expand. I know that there's a lot of organizations now that are starting up, or the civil society organizations. We've got youth-friendly corners. We've got safe spaces that are being placed in the communities out there. We have to make sure that these services are available. I like the idea that we've got the dream centers around that are providing services, to the girls. But I feel it is also important for us to capitalize on other existing structures that exist where boys can actually have access, to prevention services. And that way, we're going to have control over HIV. Stella, you mentioned something very, very important around,
Mhm.
you mentioned something very, very important around U equals U. How much education have we provided for U equals U? Do people even know what U equals U mean? You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah,
undetectable is equals to untransmittable, mean that if I'm virally suppressed from HIV virus, I cannot transmit the virus to another person. We also need to start
yeah,
addressing issues of and normalizing that it is also okay for someone who's HIV negative to date someone who's HIV positive, you know,
yeah.
and the two can work together and making sure that. How about if you want to say anything?
Uh, on that one, yes, you're right. Where you're saying that someone who is negative can date someone who is positive. You see,
Mm-hmm.
it back to how I started my morning in my
Mm-hmm.
inbox, and then person he directly said, you're encouraging negative people to go out with people who are positive. I mean, what what really what really can someone who is positive from dating someone who is negative when we've got you equals you, we've got PrEP,
Yes.
we've got condoms that transmit it to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
Yeah.
surprised. Okay, so we really need to talk more about this.
Yeah, and it's true because the other thing that I wanted to also share, I mean, as a personal story, is I was once in a relationship with someone whose status I didn't know. I dated for a long time, I think about 2 years or so. And yeah, there were times that sometimes we did compromise on protection. But one thing that I didn't share though, which I feel was a selfish journey for me, was that I'd learned already about pre-exposure prophylaxis. And I had access to pre-exposure prophylaxis. And I used to take that drug and I was hiding it in my shoe so that this person doesn't see it. And then dating someone for 2 years and making a decision, say, okay, now let's go and have our HIV test. I was like, okay, but why now, right? So it was a difficult conversation to have. However, we still went ahead and had our HIV test, and one of us tested positive. So after the results came out, obviously it was a disturbing moment for both of us looking at the activities that we engaged together. And the other person decided to go back to their home. And when they came back, they asked a question about, no, I think we need to break up. I said, why are we breaking up? They said, no, I'm HIV positive. You're not. If I was going to be if you're going to be in your shoes, if I was going to be in your shoes, I was going to do the same. And then I said, wow, this is an opportunity for me to prove something different here. And then I said, okay, if no one has ever proven to you love, regardless of your HIV status, I'm going to be the first person to date you regardless of your HIV status, you know? And they said, okay, if you say so, but what's going on? I said, nothing's going to change. All we need to do now is to make sure that we start treatment because now there's you equals you. Then they asked the question, what is U equals U? So that was for me an opportunity for me to explain the benefit of U equals U. So we made sure that they started their treatment. When we went for our second baseline test, sorry, our follow-up test on on the viral load, we discovered that the viral still wasn't reduced, it was still very high, regardless of them being on treatment for 6 months. So I said, it's all right, don't give up. Let's move. Let's continue doing it. We did for another 3 months. We're now 9 months on the treatment. We did the virology. It was still very high. I said, what is the problem? I started asking questions. Are you really taking your medication according to instructions? Are you missing them? They did share the challenges they had taking it. But eventually, when they started adhering, at 1 year, two, we did another follow-up viral test. We discovered that we were undetectable, which was very good. And we still continued dating. The rest of the story is for another day. But I just wanted to know people to know that it's possible that someone can be HIV positive, can still be in love. Nothing's going. It's just a status that has changed, and then it gives you an opportunity to support the other person to start the prevention. And if people are going to have that approach, is what is answering now Dr. Wenda's questions about how we can then end AIDS. Not really ending it, but just having control over it. If we can have people that can speak out and say, I'm ready to date another person who's HIV positive, people that are HIV positive can still, get up and say, I'm ready to date anyone regardless of HIV status, provided we are providing that support with each other so that we are having HIV under control. That's all. That's all we need. Thank you. Over to you, Dr. Mindy.
Well, thank you very much. That's been quite amazing information. What you've actually mentioned is something that Malambo has actually commented on, in our chats, and we're just going to dive into the chats. Here is what Malambo says. I feel that if we want to end AIDS, we need to fight the stigma and discrimination that is attached to HIV and AIDS. And I believe that's something that you've actually mentioned. For example, you actually being able to date somebody who is HIV positive and encouraging them, to take the right course of action. Because when you attack it in that way, you find that it will even give that person the ability to want to do things the right way, protect themselves and also protect their partner. Our next comment is, I think we should also be creative on the method of giving information to young people, because services are there, but number of young people getting is not so much, and we still have numbers rising on the young people getting infected. For me, I feel young people get bored with the same methods used to deliver information to them, and once we manage on getting them excited to get information, it will really make a difference. And you're really right, Mwilu, it's true. Maybe we have to make the way we present this information a bit more attractive for the young people, so that they can be free enough, to utilize the methods, of protecting themselves more often, frequently, or rather even every single time they engage in these activities that expose them to AIDS.
Yeah,
You know what they say, time flies when you are having an amazing time, and this conversation
yeah.
has not fallen short in any way. So even as we begin to conclude, I'll read the last comment, then we'll begin to conclude. Hope Malambo says AIDS can come to an end if people take their health seriously and take responsibility to practice safe sex to protect their sexual partners from STIs. An approach to consider could be advocacy around health sexual behavior, especially among adolescents and young people. Wow, thank you very much for that amazing information. Even as we draw to an end, maybe I would like to hear from you. What's your take-home message from this conversation that you've had, Stella? What has really stood out for you that you would want that if there's one thing that somebody should have taken, hold of in this conversation, what really would you say it is?
Mm, Personally, I would say ending AIDS is everyone's duty. It is everyone's duty to play along, to tag along, even as we've been campaigning, even as we have been disclosing our statuses. It is still everyone's duty to take part in this campaign. If I am HIV positive, I tell you to say, I am HIV positive. What are you doing about it? You who is negative, are you preventing
Mm,
yourself
mm.
from acquiring the virus? So I feel like everyone should be part and parcel of this, so as to have an easier path for us to curb this AIDS. Yeah,
Well said. Well said, Stella.
thank you very much.
I think Dr. Mendez on mute. Okay,
All
so
right.
I think that for me, my take home message is basically normalizing having prevention interventions available. So I was talking about challenging parents that we need to normalize having conversation on having condoms in our homes, in the boys' bathroom, in the girls' bathroom, or in their bedrooms. Let's normalize having that. And then also, I like playing around with Facebook a lot. So for me, I told people, I said, if you're going to bump into me, ask for a condom and lubricant and I'll give it to you. So let's also normalize in carrying a condom for a friend. Just out of fun, somewhere interactively, just say, oh, guys, I've got condoms, whoever would want, because you don't know when people are going to have sex. So when we are able to normalize such kind of interaction and availability of commodities, we find that we'll be able to actually address a lot of issues, including pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted infections, including HIV, cervical cancer, and many other complications that really, face young people or the population in general. And then the last one is that let's also improve in terms of our approaches in service provision in the facilities. We have to make sure if someone steps in to ask for PEP or PrEP, don't politicize them, don't question them, don't ask them unnecessary questions, just provide the service. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. This has been very informative. For me, I would say my take home message, well, a lot has been unpacked. So it's a little hard to really pick out one. I would also advise somebody to, in your own free time, you can go back and just listen to this conversation again, and believe you me, you'll be able to pick something that you may have missed the first time you may have listened to it. But as for me, what I would say is the take home message is the importance of being free enough, to talk about these things with your family, with your friends, and letting them know that there is really so much that they can do. For example, like many things that we said, prep, availability of sexual education, condoms and whatnot that can be used to protect each and every one of us, and that the responsibility is for each one of us. You don't throw it to your friend. It is for you to take that first step in the fight against HIV. That would be my take home message. This has been very amazing conversation, and I believe that we have benefited so much, and we have learned so much from our amazing guests. Before we just bring it to a close, I would just like to make an announcement of our two winners that have got themselves something in the competition that we have been running. Our number one first winner is Ngambo Malundu. Our second winner is Rebecca Mulenga. You are free. ZYP will contact you directly in your inboxes. So please be on the lookout for a message from us. Thank you very much for joining in. This has been the Real Talk. I'm your host. I've been your host, Dr. Chimunya Mwinde. We'll see you next week, Friday, 2 p.m. Central African time and 3 p.m. East African time. Until then, enjoy.
Use a condom.